Good evening and welcome to Thursday Therapy with the Counseling Couple. I am Seneca Bean,
And I am Carlos Bain.
and we are so happy that you have taken just a few minutes to spend some time with us. We know it's warm outside, we hear the kids outside playing, and so we know that you could be anywhere. So we thank you for joining us this evening to have such an important conversation. If you are joining us for the first time, this is a forum or an opportunity for us to have conversations every third Thursday, making mental health a priority. And so tonight is no exception. We have two great panelists that are joining us to talk about how to keep our kids safe on the internet. But before we get into that, we know it's March and we like to bring awareness to a few additional topics, mental health topics each month.
Yep. So the month of March, we have Self-Harm Awareness Month as part of March. We have American National Nutrition Month. Make sure to eat your breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. National Developmental Disability Awareness Month and Brain Injury Awareness Month. And, speaking of our brain, we want to shift our focus of this conversation to the very important topic that many families have wanted to discuss for some time, which is internet safety for our kids. And I want to take a special moment to thank one of our church members, Sister Wanda Chambers, who literally pulled me to the side and we had a very detailed conversation about what she's been dealing with as it relates to internet safety and just how it's affecting her and her household with her grandkids. So thank you, Sister Chambers, for bringing this topic to us. And as others have topic ideas that they would like for us to explore, let myself or Seneca know we are open books. We are open to discussing topics that can help the community. So let us know what's on your mind.
Absolutely. And as we are talking or chatting tonight, if you have questions that come up, because we know that internet safety is really a serious topic. If you have questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. We should be able to see those and be able to get your questions answered. So we were doing just a little bit of research. We pulled up a couple of different articles to really think about this. This is not a topic that I'm well versed in. I know how to use the internet. I know how to use social media, kind of, but I'm not very tech savvy as it relates to that. But we have teenage boys, and so we know that children, and as having been a school counselor, we know that they are exposed to so many things on the internet. And so we pulled up a couple of things, articles on video game safety and what that entails. And there are lots of things that can happen through video games, that children chat and do all those things. But we also pulled up 9 internet safety tips for teens. And so we just wanted to share just a little bit from this article, because it's titled 9 Internet Safety Tips for Teens, Stranger Danger in the Digital Age, right? And so we just want to share these 9 tips that we found before we get into the great conversation and a bit of a presentation to help us in this topic. So the first one, of course, is never post personal information online. And we would think young people would know that, but we all know that they can be kind of suckered into putting things online. And so really just having conversations about not posting personal information online is important.
Yep. Number 2, when you create a screen name, do not include personal information. So if your name is Carlos Bing, you don't want Carlos Bing anywhere in that screen name. You want it to be some kind of a nickname or some kind of an alias that doesn't put your personal information out there.
The other one, another one is censor your photos. They can often provide clues to personal information. And again, I don't know about the digital age, but I know that you can find things and look things up. So those photos are really important not to post too many.
And it's important to remember too that once they're on the internet, they never leave. So yeah, if you don't send stuff if you don't want it to be out there permanently. So again, never send photos over the internet. Again, to what Seneca just said, if I took a picture of this background here and sent it on the internet, it could give clues to my location. It may not be apparent to me, but it could be apparent to the person who is trying to get information from that picture about you.
Mm-hmm. And then this other one is a big one. Do not meet in person with someone you met on the internet. And I know that a lot of young people have a misconception that everyone is their friend or these people are their friends. And so hopefully not meeting someone on the internet is definitely a big one that you will talk about.
And then number 6, do not share your password. And this can often be difficult for folks because, again, as Seneca just said, a lot of times young folks think that everybody is their friend and they can trust everybody. Outside of your parent or guardian, sharing passwords is a no-no. And so you want to make sure that your young folks know and understand that.
Yes. Never download or install anything. We know that viruses and people getting in and hacking and doing all that kind of stuff is real. And so being careful and mindful of downloading or installing things.
And that's incredibly important too when you think about emails that you receive. If you receive an email that you just don't recognize and it has an attachment, that means don't open it because that attachment is more than likely a virus that's going to infect your PC. Number 8, use your privacy settings, which can hopefully, if you do that, will keep those emails from hacking or being a part of your PC. So making sure you have those privacy settings set appropriately based on how you need them to be set.
Absolutely. And then number 9, the last one, is it's not always strangers that you need to be cautious of. Always exercise your best judgment. And again, we go back to who's your friend, who's not your friend, we don't know, but just making sure that you're exercising your best judgment online. So again, we gave you a list of safety tips, but we actually have an expert who can give you a lot more information in this space. So we are really, really excited to hear from and to introduce our new friend, Frida Shahid, who is an online safety educator. She is actually the CEO and founder of Sakuva. I hope I said that right. Sakuva?
Sakuva, yes. Sakuva.
I'm sure you will give us all information. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And
Thank
we'll
you,
just turn it
Seneca.
over.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll turn it over
Thank
to
you.
you and hear some comments, and then we will introduce our second panelist.
I'm so excited for this conversation. So my name is Frida Shahid. I'm an award-winning Forbes 30 Under 30 online safety educator. I have taught like thousands of families online safety and security. And I'm like reading down my bio because I basically memorized it by now. So I've done like presentations for NASA and Fortune 50 companies and been featured on Cisco, Fox 25, Fox 46, WFMJ, many places, Radio 1. And my favorite place to be is actually these type of conversations because we get to, even though I can't see you, but I know that there's comments, so you can comment, you can ask questions. I absolutely love educating people on this subject. My background is in cybersecurity awareness and threat intelligence. I've also spent many years as a gamer. You probably can tell from the back of I don't know if you're actually looking at my background, but if you are, there is a gaming headphone over there. That's like a little glimpse into who I am. So I've been gaming online for a very long time, ever since I was like in my very, very early teens. And my experience, both in the professional sense of cybersecurity and the personal sense, allows me to give parents and teens a view into online security and safety that makes sense for where they are. So when I always start talking about online safety, I talk about one point as the foundation of online safety, because we can all get caught up in the technical aspects of online safety, meaning security and exactly what to do with the devices and the whole tech aspect. And a lot of parents, if you're watching this or you're a caretaker or a guardian, you might have that feeling of, I'm not tech savvy enough to do this. I don't understand the gaming world. I don't understand the social media world, the meme culture, the celebrity culture, the gaming culture, anime, whatever it is, right? You feel like because I don't know this, I'm not equipped to talk about safety and security, but you do know that you have world experiences that allows you to connect with kids and give them the safety and security that they need. So the way that I teach security is by understanding that we do not have to be technical, nor do we have to be security savvy. And I do want to, I'm building this foundations that when I'm talking, we already have that foundation and we're good with, we're good with that. Just because a lot of teens understand security, they understand social media and they understand gaming or they understand the internet or internet culture does not mean that they're security or safety savvy. Most people are not. Even if you're technically savvy, does not mean that you know how to protect yourself on the internet. So while I uphold teens and all of what they know, they're not going to be as safety and security savvy unless they've had a discussion or they understand security in a holistic way. So what I teach is holistic online safety. Holistic online safety means giving kids the freedom that they want and the safety and security that they actually need. And holistic online safety doesn't just mean that, but it also means looking at tech and security and safety as a holistic big picture view. Meaning we're not just talking about parental controls or parental monitoring or what you should or should not do, but we're thinking about it as the root. So instead of putting a Band-Aid on a wound, we're figuring out how can we heal the wound or how can we prevent the wound from ever happening to begin with. And when it does happen, because wounds will happen, life happens, you fall down, something happens. How can we heal that instead of putting a Band-Aid and hoping it will heal in the correct way? Now, I'm not a doctor, so maybe my analogy is not crystal clear, but I understand that most people will understand the analogy in a general sense, right? And so when it comes to safety online, the biggest thing that you want to focus on is a parent-child or guardian-child or caretaker-child relationship. That is what's the most important. While my expertise is not in that space, we have counselors, we have therapists in the conversation to allow us to have a more holistic view of it. And I want you to focus on how can I better connect with my kids, number one. Then number two, we're going to get into parental controls and parental monitoring and all of those awesome discussions, right? The 9 tips that we discussed today from that article. But I first want to say that figure out ways that you can understand your kids and connect with your kids and understand where they're coming from. So if your kid is really into gaming, we mentioned video games at the start. So if they're really into video games, finding out what they're interested in, why they're interested in that. If they love playing it, you can play it with them, right? That allows you to see the game and experience the game and understand the game. And you might see things in the game that you can protect your kids from. Also, if you don't feel like playing the game, that's totally fine. We look at security as a holistic view. So maybe you can watch them play the game. And I never say like in a helicopter parent way, but if they're sitting in the living room playing the game, you can walk by and go, oh, that's interesting. What happened over there? Whatever works for your family or works for you. A third way that you can connect with your kids using what they like is when they talk about it with you, leaving room for them to talk about it with you. So if you're unable to at that moment, that's totally okay. You can say, hey, look, I have a meeting right now. I'm going to be done at 5 p.m. Come back to me at 5:15. I will love to talk about this with you because I know that you're really upset about something that happened or you're really excited about a new skin that came out of the game, something like that, right? The same goes for social media. If they see a meme or see a funny video, interacting with that and connecting with them. Not only does it build connection, but it also builds rapport and allows you to see the good side of the internet. Because as someone who's in the cybersecurity and threat intelligence, I have seen the terrible, terrible sides of the internet. And we tend to, as a safety industry, focus so much, and especially with parents, focusing so much on the dangers of the internet. And I highly believe that we need to talk about it. And we also have to talk about the good side of it. Because when we're so used to looking at all, this is going to be danger, this is going to be danger here, danger there, we alienate teens and kids from their very real positive experiences. And so when something bad happens online, when they end up talking to a predator, or something happens with cyberbullying, or someone hacks into their account, or someone blackmails them, they're less likely to talk to parents and caretakers and guardians and people in their life that can protect them when all you talk about or all you focus on is the bad. Because they know that the moment they come to you with what a bad thing that happened, because no one can escape that, something bad is going to happen. It's just a matter of how big is it? How impactful is it? Is it something that is easily able to recover from? You don't want them to say, I don't want to talk to my mom about this, or I don't want to talk to my grandmother about this, or my aunt, uncle, or my teacher about this, because if I tell them this, they're going to pull away the technology from me. And if they pull away the technology from me, then I'm unable to connect with my friends or have fun. And so you always want them to be able to have a space where they can openly talk to you, where it's non-judgmental, calm, emotionally safe places. So that's why I tell parents to focus on therapy for themselves and therapy for their kids, so that you're healing your inner wounds and inner trauma, so that you're not putting your trauma or your triggers onto your kids in certain moments. And I always also say this, that it is okay if you have a reaction that's less than ideal. Because sometimes you're going to hear things from teens that is completely mind-blowing, and you're like, I've never seen this type of situation, or this makes me really angry. And you're a human being and you're allowed to have those emotions. We always say, obviously, to always remain calm anytime teens come to you with something that is really disturbing to you, or you're going to have a reaction. If you end up having a reaction, I highly suggest that you apologize after and just say, hey, look, I was upset because you told me this, and this really upset me because I'm trying to keep you safe and I was really worried for you. Whatever happens, you always apologize. And so I know we're going to talk about that because our whole culture of parents and caretakers not apologizing because we don't have a culture of being open and honest in that way. But I highly recommend you focus on non-judgmental spaces so that you can have that. So now that we have that off the blood, I don't know how long I've been taking, but I know I have 10 minutes. So I'll just quickly, now that we've gotten to that foundation, I'll talk quickly about the technical aspects of parental controls and monitoring and keeping safe spaces in a technical sense. It doesn't have to be technical, but in the technical sense. So when it comes to social media, you want to teach your kids boundaries. You want to teach them exactly what to post and what you're going to keep private and why you have to keep private. So anytime you set a rule in the household or a guideline, giving them the why behind it and allowing it to be an open conversation does not mean that what they say is going to go, but it allows them to have a voice. Because if your kids are able to say no, or able to critically think about things, or able to have conversations with you, they're more likely to be able to protect themselves against cyberbullies and predators online. When kids are in a household where it's obedience first and obedience only, and they cannot say no to tiny little things that they have the ability to say no, so you're not giving them a choice to say no, then they're not understanding the concept of boundaries and consent. And so when they start going out in the world and interacting with people who could be trying to groom them or trying to do predatory behavior, they're in the space of obedience and yes, 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 and pleasing everyone and become people-pleasing people. And so they're unable to maintain their boundaries online. You see, while we always talk about the foundation of holistic online safety instead of just parental controls, I'm pretty sure we all know that if your kid has a video game or social media account, you always want to check the settings. You want to check the settings for what? This is a reminder. We say this often, but this is a reminder to check their settings for privacy settings, for security settings, and for parental settings. If they're really young, parental settings are extremely important because you want to create boundaries and filters in their experiences so they're not experiencing things that are inappropriate for their age. If they're a little bit older and you know that they're more mature and they're able to navigate the online space in a way that's different than when they were younger, then parental filtering or parental boundaries may not be as needed at that age. But what you want to always have is privacy and security. Not only do you need to know privacy and security, not only do your kids need to know it, but you need to know it. Because a lot of parents, you might not know that your security and safety within the household and online actually impacts your kids' safety and security. And so this discussion is bigger than just what kids are posting, but what are parents posting. A lot of predators and hackers, they follow parent accounts and school accounts to get information about kids so that they can document all of that and stalk kids. So this is not just about what kids are posting, but as collectively as a society, how are we operating with consent in terms of photos and sharing of information? And then you want to think about the privacy settings that kids have, but the privacy settings that you have. The security settings, do you have really good passwords? Are they long passwords? Are they passphrases? Are you using something called a password manager that manages all your passwords securely for you? Do you have two-factor authentication, which is 2 ways of authenticating to one account to make sure that that account is more secure and more safe? Basically, what you're doing is you're putting locks on your doors, you're putting security settings in your house so that it's not to say that someone's not going to break into your house, but it's now that you have an alarm system, that the 911 is called immediately, that the police is at your door, that a police report is getting filed. So all of those things is similar to the physical world, but you're just putting in the digital world so that you're protecting yourself and you're putting barriers to entry for your family. And so I would love to know if I'm on time because I didn't look at the time, but if I'm not, please let me know. But that is the beginning of it.
You can continue.
I can continue. Okay. So that's the foundation of it in terms of the holistic online safety, and then protecting kids on social media and video games in a general sense. Video games and social media are quite similar, so those are the main points that I had.
Perfect. I was you caught me looking down because I've been taking notes. So.
She's taking notes and I'm typing.
Yes. This has been great information, and we'll get into it more with the conversation, but just really a few takeaways from that is teaching boundaries, right? Given the why. And you're right. sometimes teach that you don't always give the why behind everything. And so, or have grown up in situations like that, but really helping them to understand why they shouldn't do certain things instead of just saying, don't do it. And so that was a big one. And then checking the private security and parental controls. And I really liked how you described the two-step authentication and comparing it to having a security, system in your home, and how you secure your home and you do those pieces. And so it's kind of the same with online. So.
Yeah, it doesn't guarantee that you won't, you may still have issues, but it's going to protect you if you have those things available to you. I know with our office, we have two-step factor authentication to be able to get into different websites, and it's important. It protects us. The other thing that you mentioned too was that as we discussed with our kids, not just focusing on the negative sides of the internet, but thinking about the pros and cons and being able to share in that with our kids, so that they not only see that these things, this part of it's bad, but there's also a lot of great things that the internet can do. And so even when they fall into a situation that may be bad, being able to talk to them about the positive sides of the internet can be very helpful as well.
Absolutely. We love this conversation, so we want to open it up a little more and bring in our second panelist into the screen so we can have our conversation. So Jathia Abdullah Simmons is an old friend of both of ours. She worked with Carlos at one point, and then she worked with me at one point, and so we've known her for a while. We're really, really happy that she's here, yes, to share in this conversation. So Jathia is a school counselor, a licensed school counselor, and so we've got an online safety educator. We've got a couple school counselors. Yes, I'm not outnumbered. And then we have, our licensed professional counselor here. And so this will be a good conversation for us to have, because we have different vantage points in ways that we've been able to work with students or people or sometimes families in this space. So welcome, Jathia. So glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. All right. So our first question is, when working with families, what are some of the concerns that you've heard regarding internet safety? So we'll start with you, Jathia, in the school. And if you want to share who you are, a little bit about who you are, and then we'll pose that first question.
Sure. Again, my name is Jathia Abdullah Simmons. I'm a school counselor. This is year 10 for me on this journey of school counseling, and I work with high school students in one of the largest districts here in Columbus. And so in relation to the question, Seneca, the things that parents are having conversations about and that I've heard is mainly when they're on these online gaming platforms, and these conversations that are happening in the chat, on the chat features with strangers. And so I'm talking to some parents who are like, who is my child talking to? How do I make sure they're safe? What do we need to do? And so it's really nice that Frida is here to kind of share those resources for me to take back to my students, as well as to share with you, the folks that are listening tonight. So that's the majority of what I'm hearing. The biggest concern is those online chat rooms in relation to gaming.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so we can open it up. Frida, I don't know if you have any thoughts around that also.
That's a big question. I feel like that's the biggest question I get as well, is who are they talking to? Mm-hmm. I would say that when it comes to online games, I'm a biggest believer in that it can be awesome in general. However, younger kids, gaming platforms are not the best for younger kids. I'm just a firm believer in that. Unless you have parental guidance in that moment or supervision in that moment. I've seen parents where they play the games with their kids. That's how they have bonding moments after work or school. And they sit and play games with their kids, and the chat is going, or voice chat is going, but it's okay because a parent is there. I've seen the only cases I've seen work is when they're older and they're more mature and they can navigate by themselves, and they have the safety system in the household so that if anything goes wrong, the parent is there in that moment. So when it comes to younger kids, I highly recommend using parental features and supervision where you just turn those things off, because there's no need for 8, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12-year old to be. I understand that there are certain games where it's for strategy and you want to be talking to other people, but I don't see the point in talking to strangers online at such a young age, especially when there's not a lot of safety supervision in that case. So I highly recommend parents to make sure that that feature is turned off. If there is an inability to turn that feature off, that means that inherently the game is not meant for kids. There are just certain things that we honestly forget, though, that there are things on the internet that are actually not meant for kids, and they do not have kid supervision because they're not supposed to be there. It's kind of like saying the club needs kid supervision. Well, it doesn't, because kids aren't supposed to be there. So, so what the company needs to do is make that clear that this is not for kids. This just like the Oculus, right? The VR virtual reality space. There are certain games that are 18 plus only, and they're not meant for kids, but kids are getting into that. So that's the problem versus parental controls within it, because it's not, kids aren't supposed to be there in the first place.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
That's really good. Yeah, it really comes down to parenting and making sure that parents understand what the child should have access to. It's funny this is coming up today because yesterday Disney, so I have Disney Plus, and they just adjusted, or they sent an email saying that if you want to watch these movies, like Luke Cage or Daredevil, which are more mature, you have to adjust your settings. And I was teasing my 16-year-old. I said, well, you're not an adult. You really shouldn't be watching these shows. Now, I know he's already watched them, but I was teasing him and I was saying that, I have to change the settings to allow you to have access to this. And I believe you are mature enough to be able to watch these shows, but that's my choice because I understand your mindset. But trust me, if you can't handle that, I'm going to turn those controls off. He kind of looked at me like I was crazy, but he knows I'll turn them off. It got me to thinking like there's a level of parental responsibility that we have. So thank you for sharing that, Frida.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
I think about these children we have, and I do not like video games with blood in them. Okay,
Yes.
it seems like every video game has something in it in that way, and so he had to help me understand that he was speaking to the kids about these games. I'm like, oh, they shouldn't play them. He's like, okay. No, listen, we have to have a conversation with them about the video games. So even in our own household, as they were growing, they would, I guess you can turn it off and then turn it on. And it was really weird. And so I'm glad that he would, be there with them to kind of understand what was happening, because I would just see a piece of it and want to just take it all away. And so thank you for helping us with this. Yeah. So
I do want to say
yeah.
it's not always on the parents too, because sometimes we put so much onus on the parents and just, you shouldn't be doing this and why aren't you doing that? But there is a responsibility for the companies to make sure that they have safe environments for kids. And also, I mean, every family has a different alignment. Some families, like you said, they don't want to see magic. Some families don't want to see blood. Some families don't want to see like too overly relationship-y type game. They want to just focus on the game and leveling up. So there are different types of games, and you can decide not to have video games at all. Like you can say no TV, no video games, no social media. That's every family's different.
You're right.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So this next question,
Farida.
I'm going to go to Nadia first, and then Farida, because I'm wondering for you, Jathia, like when you're dealing with parents in the school building, um, you know, how would you explain internet safety, or how would you help a parent to explain internet safety to their child? What are some tips that you might provide to them?
Sure. So the first thing, and I think Farida had said this too, just having a honest conversation, just putting everything out there on the table. Say, okay, if you choose to have your kid be on the internet, these are the things you need to consider. Again, back to the privacy settings. How old is your child? Right? And I work with high school students, so all of those kiddos have some type of phones, smartwatch, whatever the case may be, and having honest conversations with your children. Just, in your household, you have to decide how you want your child to walk through the world with technology, and having to say, okay, if you want a phone, these are the parameters. Um, say from you can have the phone from this time to this time, because a lot of our students, I don't know if you guys are going to touch on this, they're staying up all through the night on their phones talking. Some students do a lot of FaceTime on their phones, and they're coming to school tired because I had a student come in the other day say, I was FaceTiming till 3 in the morning. And so just letting parents know, you need to decide how you want your child to walk through the world with this technology. Again, putting do you want your child to have the phone from this time to this time? Does your child play sports? Obviously, you need to connect with them. And so that's one of the biggest tips, just honesty, open communication, because they're going to want that phone all the time. And so I think that's the biggest tip. That's the biggest tip.
You're right. You're right. And, as I think about the school setting, one of the largest battles is the phone. It is when they should operate the phone, when they should have the phone. Do you have it in class? Do I work better with music? Do I not work better with music? It just all of these different things in teaching young adults. I also came from the high school world, but also young children, but teaching them when it's appropriate, because we're not going to get around people having phones. So we have to help them to learn when it's appropriate to have the phone out or not, and to disconnect, which is becoming, it seems like, increasingly more difficult. So, Frida, we posed the same question to you.
And can you say the question again, just to make sure that I'm getting it correctly?
Yes. How do you explain internet safety to, the children and or families that you are working with?
I explain internet safety as boundaries, and you're sticking to your moral code and who you are and your goals in life. So most kids, most teens, they do not want someone inside of their accounts. If they're playing a game, they don't want someone ruining their progress at a game. They don't want someone taking their photos. They don't want someone looking at their messages and plastering it online, or taking their photos and plastering online. So I describe safety and security as protecting yourself from someone basically violating your personal space in your space that you've created online, whether it's digital. Digital is an extension of you. It still is violating when someone goes through your phone and takes your things and puts it online, or steals it away, or takes your account from you. So security and safety is basically having boundaries, digital boundaries, whether that's mental, emotional boundaries in terms of cyberbullying or just saying nasty things online, or it is virtual boundaries in terms of, this is my account, these are my messages, this is what I want to keep safe. I don't want other people to get into it. So when I talk about security and safety with teens, I talk about it on the level that they understand, in terms of, it's not just about, hackers and predators, but it's about like a very real thing of, do you want someone running off with your information?
Yes, that's. Sometimes they're a little too honest, or too free and giving, and they allow people to have things, and then once things happen, they struggle in that space. Did you have any comments before? Okay. So you kind of hit on this next question, but if there's anything to add, please feel free. When we're talking about advice that you are giving to a child protecting themselves, Frida, you just hit on not giving up all of that information so that people have access to you and can expose those things that you don't want exposed. Does the advice that you give shift from if it's a younger child to a teenager, or is it pretty similar?
It shifts. It does shift, because teenagers, to me, and I know some people don't like when I say this, but teenagers are young adults. So they're not full adults yet, and they're not kids. So we have a tendency to treat teens like they're kids, and when they act like kids, it's a bad thing. So they get very confused. I'm like, am I a kid or am I an adult? And so I love using the term young adult, because you are not an adult and you're not a kid. So you're a young adult. You're in the in-between. So we're like transitioning them out of the kid years, where they still might act like a kid, to be honest. And you're getting them ready to become an adult. So everything that you talk to them about is with the mindset of you are going to be going out on your own in the world. And similar to what Daphne said, she said, you want to be prepared. How do you want to show up in the world? How do you want other people to respond to you? How do you want to respond to other people? So now we're getting into you're picking what you want to do in your life. You're picking where you're going to live, who you're going to be friends with, the mindset you're going to have, and the choices you make as a teen. We also have in a society where, oh, it's the teenage years. They're going to make mistakes. Let them do what they want to do. And while, yes, they will make mistakes, you still want to hold them accountable for the actions that they take because they are young adults. And when we get into security and we get into safety, we have to have a very real conversation about what you do will follow you. And you can get into legal trouble based off what you do online. So we cannot make teens feel like they're kids, because a kid might go off at 8, 9, 10 years old. They may be able to leave. But when and we're all African Americans here, Black Americans, or not, I don't know if we're Black Americans, we're all Black people. And so, when we're out in the world, if there's a little Black boy that does something, we just had a situation where a little Black boy, it was very innocent, but he shouldn't have done it, but it was quite innocent. He didn't like that he had to do a lot of homework in the school, so he hacked into the school system and shut all the computers down. Now, while, he wasn't coming from a malicious place, he didn't want to do his homework. He's like, wow, you guys are giving me too much. But when the police came, they arrested him because they didn't see him as just a little boy who was frustrated with school. So when we're talking about safety and security, and we're talking about the legality of things, and we're talking about, of course, sexting and all of those, we get into some legal waters, and you're no longer a kid. The law's not going to say, oh, wow, you're 16, you're underage. No, you're 16 years old, you're a young adult. So we do have to teach them, we have to talk about security differently than we do with kids, because now they're responsible young adults with responsibilities that is going to increase as they get older. It's never going to decrease. So I always say talk about it differently. And I don't scare them, but tell them exactly what they need to, and it will scare them. You don't have to scare them. You just give them the real stuff. That'll do.
Right. Jathy, I'll pose this question to you, and really thinking about it from the school perspective. And there may have been some situations that you may have witnessed that crosses over into that realm where young adults need to know that there's serious legal situations. So we're posing the same question to you.
No, so a couple of things. I wrote 2 things down. Number one, I absolutely talk to the high school students differently. It's a much more blunt, direct conversation, talking about the legality piece if you do this. And Frida, I don't know if you're realizing that. So what's going on a lot in the high schools, there's 2 issues. A lot of things are going on in these WhatsApp chats. And then what people are also doing is they are doing these airdrops on iPhones. So it may be an inappropriate picture, and anybody who has an iPhone, they're dropping these photos. You can choose to accept it or not, and there are some controls on your iPhone that you can change to make sure you can only get airdrops from friends or family or nobody. But that's become a really big issue. So when somebody sends an inappropriate picture of a young lady to 300, 400 phones in a school, it becomes a real issue. So I wanted to put that out there because I made a note to share that regarding the iPhones and the airdrop capability. Just recently, we had to deal with an issue among some young ladies through the WhatsApp chat. They're back and forth, and they're pulling other people into these conversations, and then it spills over into unfortunate verbal or physical escalations in the school. So we had to deal a lot with that. And so I always say, in relation to me being a school counselor, I really enjoy working with the high school students because I can be very blunt and direct with them. And we talked, again, back to the sexting, inappropriate pictures, all of these really scary things. And then on top of that, guys, we are talking about students who are transitioning to life after high school. And this stuff does follow them. And what you're putting out there, companies are looking at, colleges and universities are looking at. And if you have some inappropriate things out there on the internet, whether it's your social media page, whether, and people are like, even in It's like Snapchat, people are saving pictures and reposting them and things like that. It can impact your acceptance to your dream school. And so please keep that in mind. Those are the kind of things I wanted to share because it can absolutely impact what's next for you.
That is so
Especially as kids, they want to be influencers and they want to be YouTubers. And so I'm like, okay, well, if you want to be an influencer and YouTuber, then you're gonna have to think of someone. Think about if you had 1 million people following you right now, and you posted something crazy that happened last night, and that is going to follow you for centuries. Okay, I mean, you can just pull up any celebrity, any influencer, any YouTube, whatever, TikToker. They will go back 10 years of a tweet they posted, something they put on MySpace, something they put on Reddit. They will do a screenshot of a text message thread, something they put in WhatsApp or in a group text. So it's not, you, when you're operating in that space, you want to think, okay, if you want to become an influencer, who are you influencing? What impact are you making? Why are you online? How do you want other people to see you? When you're brand collaborations, that's a business. They don't want to collaborate with someone who's off the chains or is putting things online that is inappropriate, right? So you have to think about your brand. So I talk to teams, I'm like, look, if you want that, then let's talk about that. Let's get into the real, you're going to lose money and lose contracts and lose ability to get your dream, whatever collaboration, if you're posting X, Y, and Z online, if you're creating a lot of drama, if every single feeling you have is in the online space. And so if they really want that, they have to think about the ramifications of doing that. And even if you don't want to be someone in the public, you're still going to be someone who is in the online space. And employers, like Jathia said, they will check LinkedIn, they'll check Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, honestly, they don't have to do that. They can just search the web. They have little crawlers and see wherever your name is. And they can, even if you use an anonymous name, they can still find you. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing I
so.
wanted to also add, Seneca, young people, if you're listening, please make sure you have appropriate Gmail, whatever account, because you're coming up on that time when you're applying to colleges and universities. And some of y'all, with all due respect, have some inappropriate email addresses. And so I wanted to just put that out there from an educational standpoint, because they're not going to respond. I mean, I've seen some email addresses, y'all. I'm like, come on, guys. And so just make it simple, like your first initial, your last name, maybe a number or something behind it. And then that way you can get all your correspondence from the colleges, universities, or employers with that much more professional looking email address. So just wanted to share that as well.
Absolutely agree.
Yes. So these are some great tips and tricks and information that you are getting this evening. And we really wanted to have this kind of conversation because, again, there are so many things that happens with the internet and people are using it in many different ways, especially our young people. They're a lot more tech savvy in terms of being online. Let me say that. They're online a lot more than we are. And, I've had really serious conversations also with folks who are prosecuting attorneys who come out and do presentations to schools. And their presentations are a lot different than Frida's. Okay. It's very scary. And so, really, kids sometimes don't realize when they are accepting. I know that Jathia had talked about those airdrops and those going to the phone. And so when the students are accepting those airdrops, they are becoming liable. They're becoming a part of whatever case is being developed, right? And so when they start figuring those pieces out, or if they have to do an investigation, they're going to investigate everyone that received that airdrop. And so these are really serious implications and charges that can come from just accepting something, right? And so please, parents who are watching, just have those real conversations with your teens about what they are accepting and seeing on their phones.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind too is there's a statistic that says that technology doubles, and I don't know the exact quote, but technology is doubling by the minute. It's the ability for things to expand, and the internet is off the hook. I remember, so this is 2022, it was probably about 2014, so we're talking about 8 years ago. I was working with my youth group, and we were at a high school, and one of the guys asked one of the youth that we were working with for his first and last name and one other identifying factor. And the things that came up And this was 8 years ago. So the technology has gotten increasingly better since then. So to both of y'all's point in terms of what's put out there, it stays out there. You can't get rid of it. Employers are looking at it. Colleges are looking at it. Um, Folks are savvy. As you said, Jathia, when we first got on here, you looked up Farida's information to see what you could see about her. That's what we do now, and that's what employers do, because we're curious. But it can also point you into some information that you don't want out there. So you got to be really careful about the things you put online. Um, I want to pose a different question than what we had on our list, because it kind of ties back to what kind of started this conversation while I was at church. And the question was, so parents that are dealing with children that are attached to these devices, like there are situations that we have heard of where kids are screaming, where they are in some ways losing their mind because they are being separated from the device. What can we do? How can we help parents when their child, has become the Tasmanian devil because I have snatched their device from them? What are some things that we can do to help them?
I'll take this one first, if that's okay. So kind of going back to what we were saying in relation to building that rapport and that relationship and setting those boundaries. And when those boundaries are in place prior to you giving that child or that young person a phone, fingers crossed, it'll be a much better situation. And you'll be able to, okay, it's 11 p.m., go ahead and put your phone downstairs, whatever the case may be. However, we this is the area, Carlos, where we're struggling. If I'm going to be, full disclosure, a mom had called me some time ago. Her and her daughter are like battling over this phone, and mom had removed it from her. She hid it. The child found it, and it wasn't pretty. And so then the mom had called me, how do what do we do? This phone situation is really getting out of hand. Our relationship is being impacted. She said what she said. And so just kind of calming her down and just giving, it was like, you need to have an honest conversation with her. Set some boundaries, even if they don't like them. It is for their benefit. But that's hard because in the classrooms, teachers are fighting that battle. And some teachers have like a cell phone charging area, or one teacher even got like a clear shoe organizer and labeled each little clear organizer so every kid knows where their phone goes in that particular classroom. And so the child or young person can see their phone and they know they can get it at the end of class. So that works sometimes. But if the student says they don't have their phone, this is a struggle for us even when we're doing testing, because students have to put those phones away, their smartwatches, all those kind of things. And if a phone goes off, that's a potential testing violation. So I don't know if there's boundaries, honest conversations, but it is an ongoing battle, Carlos. It's not an easy one.
Like it's a huge thing. I agree with Jathia. I look at that as it's a deeper problem than just the phone. There's something going on there that's deeper than the phone, which is why I always say to lean on therapists and counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists that can help you, because it's not just about, they're addicted to the phone. Something's happening with their relationship with themselves that they believe that they need to be attached to a phone to make themselves feel better. And so I always say that like every human being has like some basic needs. We have the need to feel like that we're worthy, that we're enough. A lot of teens don't believe that they're enough. They don't love themselves, number one. Number two, we want to feel loved and be loved, and we want to give out love. And then we want to feel connected to other people. And one of the 3 or 4 things is severed if they are so connected to their phone. So instead of focusing so much on the phone, focus on what's severed and what happened and why are they so addicted to it and why do they feel the need to be attached to it to feel whole. Because you should never be attached to something outside of yourself to feel whole. That means that something has went wrong in the process, because no one was born addicted to the phone. yes, it's addicting, and they make it. If we all most likely saw Social Dilemma, we saw exactly what the engineers do to make sure that things are addictive because companies need to make money and there's an attention economy, right? So yeah, so it's not that the teams are going crazy. They actually specifically make games and social media and the phones addictive so that kids are on it so they can have more advertising to make more money. That's just basic, right? That's going to happen. So, but then there's like an increased attachment to it. So you have to do like the 7 layers of why. So every time you say something, it's like, why? Why are you, well, I'm on TikTok for 5 hours. Why? Well, I'm 5 hours because it makes me feel good. Why? Well, it makes me feel good because I don't have to think about that. Why? Well, because, and then now you're starting to get into like the real issue. So instead of focusing on the phone is bad, the phone is terrible, let me take away the phone, go, okay, what's going on, what's happening? Let's have, just like Dathia said, an open, honest, non-judgmental conversation. And this is not about, I hate the phone or I hate you. I love you and I love what you love. And what matters to you matters to me. And I want to solve this because I know that this is what you want to do with your life. Or maybe you don't know what you want to do with your life. So this phone is distracting you from being the most happiest person that you can be. And I want you to be happy, and I know you want to be happy. So what do you love doing? Whether it's in the phone or outside of the phone. Oh, really? So you love TikToks. Why do you like TikToks? Oh, you love anime. Why do you like anime? You like gaming. Why do you like gaming? What does it make you feel? So now we're having a constructive conversation where you're like, we're both on the same exact side. I love you so much. You being attached to that phone is killing me inside. And I do not want to see this because this makes me feel like you're not accomplishing what I want you to accomplish. Now it's like, oh, now we're having a conversation. Now, obviously, that's not going to work for everyone. That's not like magic pill and it's going to start working, which is why I always say therapy for yourself and for your kids, not just for your kids and not just for yourself. It has to be, and it doesn't have to be a family thing. You don't have to go to a therapist's office as a family together and sitting on the couch, but it is a decision you make as a family. And I know sometimes it's difficult because obviously there's a case of insurance and alignment. And is this therapist the right one for my family? So even if you are unable to find therapy now, I always say that if you're on social media, you can follow people who have accounts that talk about this, right? So you can follow people who talk about safety, talk about security, talk about wellness, talk about therapy, healing intergenerational trauma, healing wounds. Because everything you see, there's something under it. There's deeper than that. It's not about the phone addiction. It's something that's disconnected. So that's what I would say with that.
Yes, I love that you were talking about getting to the root cause and asking why 7 times, not just stopping right there at the first layer. Really trying to dig in and dig deep and just have those conversations. That can be tough conversations because we know young people, they love their phone. But again, I'm helping them to understand there are times where you have to set boundaries and you can't have it every second of the day. You have to be able to put it away at some point. And Jothy, I'm glad you brought up because I was thinking also about testing and all that. Students have testing all the time. And I remember when we would tell them we need to collect your phones and they would almost like pass out. And it's like, we're going to put a sticky note on it with your name. Like you're going to get your phone back. We need to collect it so that we don't have any testing violations. So I'm glad you brought that up.
And Seneca, that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed.
Oh my. you made me trauma thinking about it again. No.
Sorry. Didn't want to take you back there.
Frida, you said we have to heal those wounds. Woo! That was a wound. No. So thinking about, so the last few questions we're going to kind of combine because I really, one of the things that I would always ask a student is who is your safe person at school? Like, and so if in combining them, if you're feeling like there's bullying online or someone may be asking you for some personal things and you don't quite know what you should do with that, what is some advice? Who should they go to start to have this conversation that they are feeling? Because they're not always comfortable going to their parent. They don't know, should I say this or should I not? How are they going to react? Are they going to take the phone? So my question is, how can students start to identify, young people, as a safe person to start to ask these questions if they are feeling that these things are happening? So I'll go to Frida first, and then I'll come back to Jathia.
Identifying your safe person, I would say someone who makes you feel comfortable. Like if someone makes you feel comfortable and you feel emotionally safe with them, meaning if you're telling your emotions and your feelings towards them, you believe that that person will take care of it. And so if you're thinking about your emotions as a physical thing, like this is my feeling, it's a physical thing. If I were to hand it to someone and they're holding it in their hands, and I'm visualizing that, what person would be right for that caretaking of that, my heart, of my feelings, of my emotion, of my intellect? And whatever person that comes to mind where you go, if that person, I'm a very like epic type person. So like visualization of who it is and them having it in their hand. And you're like, that's a safe person, and that's a safe person. Because sometimes we don't understand what does safe mean, what does uncomfortable mean. It just means that when you're giving them your feelings and you're giving them your heart, you believe that it's safe with them and they'll take care of it and they will not lash out. Which is why one of the biggest things we talk about in our industry in a general sense is that not taking away devices when something goes wrong unless it's absolutely needed. Because when there's that friction, then sometimes that becomes an unsafe space in their own head. And so they no longer will come to you when things happen, and then they'll start hiding and being sneaky. So sometimes I do believe in taking away the phone. We're not talking about schools. We're talking about parent-child relations. Schools is a whole different thing. Like you got a test going on. you walk into the classroom. She says, put it in the shoebox. You put it in the shoebox. We're not talking about that. We're talking about something happens. Unless it's needed to take away the phone, don't take it away unless it's absolutely needed for their own safety and security. But basically that feeling of I feel safe telling that person. It doesn't have to be everything, but enough that you feel safe.
Jackie?
Um, I absolutely agree with everything Farida said. And one of the things I tell my students is who is on your team? Who can you identify when you're struggling with something? And I go in a classroom, we do classroom guidance lessons, and that's one of the first things I always say to all my students in the beginning of the year. And then sometimes we have to kind of go a little deeper with some students. Who is that person you feel safe with? And the way Farida articulated that, just to let you know, Farida, I'm going to steal that when I have conversations with students, because I thought that was just so beautifully said in relation to if I'm putting this in your hand or I'm giving this to you. I'm a visual learner as myself. And so thank you for saying that. So, and Seneca, we always steal from each other.
Yes.
And so
That's how you do it best.
and so she said it. Who is the person when you share something, they're non-judgmental and they're there to support you. And that's a key factor. Students don't want to be judged. They want to be heard. And sometimes we're not even there to always fix it for them. They just want to be able to articulate that and navigate it and figure it out for themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Y'all have given some amazing nuggets tonight. And I'm sitting here thinking we're going to have to start extending these calls. I'm going to have to talk to our DJ in the background and say, can we extend these down the road? But I know we're coming up towards the end. In fact, I hear music. That might be the wrap-up music. I don't know. So if it is the wrap-up music, I think that if y'all can just give like one real quick, just one last thing that you want to share with the people before we give our thank yous. Just one quick thing, Jothy, and then Farida, if you wouldn't mind sharing just one last thing with the people.
Sure. Again, having authentic, honest conversations and keep trying. Even if you feel like this conversation didn't go well, do it again and try again. Remember, there's no mistakes. You're learning in the process, and it's okay. It's okay. You got this.
I agree. Plus one that is open, honest, beautiful conversations. Focus on what you can control. You will not be able to control everything. So trying to control everything will make yourself go mad. There are no mistakes. They're just learning opportunities and asking for help. It is okay. So I'm here to help. I post on social media all the time. I'm Cyber Frida everywhere. I do daily YouTube videos. I'm not going to do this for a while. I'm just doing it for a little bit for now. But I do daily YouTube videos on protecting your kids on social media, video games in general, and just focusing on your own healing as a parent and your kids' healing. So everything's a learning opportunity. There are people here to help you. There's no crazy question. Everything is open. And like Marie Foley says, I think she's like, everything is figure outable. We can figure everything out.
Yeah.
It'll be okay.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with us this evening. We really, truly appreciate these open and honest conversation and just taking time to be with us this evening. We thank any viewers that are with us for just taking your time to be with us. And we thank Dr. and Dr. Wise for making mental health a priority and giving us this forum to have these awesome conversations. Thank you, Salon, in the background for all that you are doing. And until we meet again next month, the third Thursday, we will say good evening.
Thanks, everybody.